Week one of college football is finally here, and for the first time in college football history, we have three top 10 matchups in week one. And the first one of those is going to be the first game we're talking about, Ohio State and Texas. This one should be an incredible game. Buckeyes got the home field advantage. Texas is the number one team in the country, though. ESPN currently has the Buckeyes favored by 1.5. We have this as a pick 'em, but as you can see, we are going with the Buckeyes at home. There's a lot of hype around Arch Manning, particularly. I think him and Julian Sayin are actually going to play very similar this game, probably a little bit lower scoring than people might expect. But in the end, I think the Buckeyes, especially with having that home field advantage, are going to be able to come up with just a few more defensive stops and get the job done.
We saw how this game played out last year in the Cotton Bowl and how Ohio State was able to pull out that victory. But Texas did the best job of any team last year in slowing down Jeremiah Smith, limiting him to one catch for 3 yards. But they did that by double teaming him or triple teaming him every single play. And we saw Ohio State was able to use their other weapons to counteract Texas focusing all of that effort into Jeremiah Smith. Carnell Tate had his best game of his college career. Mecca Ibuka did well. Trevion Henderson did well, but most of those guys are gone outside of Carnell Tate. But they brought in Max Clare, who's going to be their starting tight end. They got a great running back room. Texas probably wins some of the battles in the trenches, especially on that offensive line. But I really think with the home field advantage, and with Julian Sayin maybe not having as much pressure as Arch Manning to be the guy in his first career start against a team like this, is going to play just a little bit better and lead Ohio State to this win. The second game we're going to talk about is going to be Syracuse and Tennessee. Two teams that were very, very good last year, but have lost so much of that team. Both their starting quarterbacks are gone. Kyle McCord's off to the NFL, and Nico Iamaleava is now a UCLA Bruin. And most of the weapons that they had are also gone. ESPN has Tennessee favored by 13.5 points. We think it's going to be a little bit closer than that, considering that Tennessee is probably a little bit overrated right now, considering that they have to build a whole new offense this season. We're going to have it at 6.5 points favored for Tennessee. And we are going to have Tennessee winning this game. I do trust the coaching staff of the Volunteers to get them a win over Syracuse at a neutral site. But I wouldn't be surprised if Syracuse can pull off a bit of an upset here. I do like the head coach for the Orange. I do think he can will this team to a win if he so chooses. But Tennessee is just a little bit more experienced here, so we're going to go with the Volunteers.
Yeah, I don't think that Tennessee's quite going to be as good as people think they will this year, but they should still be a better team than Syracuse. We also are just a little bit higher on Syracuse than other people, which is why we have this spread about a touchdown lower than ESPN. But I still think that the Vols can get it done by around 7 points or so. Next game is going to be Tulane and Northwestern. Tulane has the home field advantage. And I think that they are the better team than Northwestern regardless. They have a very solid roster coming back despite losing Darian Mensah. They got Jake Retzlaff from BYU in the transfer portal pretty recently. So the offense should be very, very solid. ESPN has them favored by 4.5. We're even a little bit more confident than that. We have Tulane by about a touchdown here.
And it will be interesting considering that Tulane is one of the front runners for that group of five bid for the college football playoffs. And I do think they have a team that can compete for that, especially in the American Conference, one of the more competitive ones. Northwestern doesn't have a lot going for them, but they are still a Power Four team, and it's hard to beat a Power Four team, even if you are one of the best group of five teams. That's why the spread for this game isn't a egregious amount in favor of Tulane. Still can be a little bit competitive, especially for the first game of the season for these two teams, but Tulane should be the better team here and get the win. Next up is one of the more anticipated matchups of week one. It's Toledo versus Kentucky, and Kentucky's bringing in Zach Calzada to be their starting quarterback, who we think is going to be a great fit for the Wildcats here and maybe help Kentucky become even a little bit more competitive than they were last year. We saw them upset Ole Miss and nearly beat Georgia. And I think we can see some similarities in this team this year, even with the departures on defense. This Toledo team returns a lot of production themselves, including their starting quarterback, and we saw them able to get a win over Pitt in their bowl game last year. This Toledo team is a lot of people's favorites to also get into the college football playoffs as that group of five team. But I do think Kentucky, with Zach Calzada as their starting quarterback, is just going to be a little bit more explosive and should be able to get this win. Kentucky is favored by 9.5 points by ESPN. We like it just around there as well. Should be a pretty competitive game, but we will go with the SEC team at home here.
Next up is Alabama and Florida State. This one might be a little bit of a sneaky good matchup. A lot of people think the Crimson Tide are going to be very good this year. We are right on board with that as well. Ty Simpson, I think, is going to do a very solid job as the starting quarterback. But Florida State has a very tough home field advantage. And while they had a terrible season last year, they made a lot of additions through the transfer portal trying to fix that, including Thomas Castellanos at the quarterback position. He did a very good job for Boston College before getting hurt last year. And if he can stay healthy, I think Florida State's going to have a really good season. ESPN's got this spread at just over 2 touchdowns for Alabama. I actually think that Florida State can maybe keep it a little bit closer to 10 points. They're still going to lose, but I think this will be a closer game than people are expecting. We have the Crimson Tide, but watch out because Florida State is going to be a solid team this year. So this is going to be a very good game.
Especially with how much Florida State has been talking leading up to this game, particularly Thomas Castellanos. I do think an upset is on the table here. Like Jonah said, this is one of the tougher places to play in, especially since the stadium just got renovated. I expect the Florida State fans to be out in full force for this game, and I wouldn't be surprised if Florida State has a lead at some point, maybe going into halftime, but I do think Alabama with Ryan Williams and Ty Simpson, that connection needs to be on full display early on in this game. And I do think that will be the reason Alabama can get this win, especially with such a good defense to back that offense up. Then it is one of the most anticipated games of the day, LSU versus Clemson. This is going to be such an incredible game. It's the Tigers versus the Tigers. It's the team that plays at Death Valley versus the team that plays at Death Valley at Death Valley. Two of the Heisman front runners. Just an incredible game on paper, and I am so excited to see how this plays out. LSU has so much hype going into this year after falling short of expectations under Brian Kelly. This defense has been completely revamped and has so much going for them. Offensively, Garrett Nussmeier back as the starting quarterback. We've seen how this goes for LSU senior quarterbacks who returned for one last season, as in Joe Burrow and Jaden Daniels. LSU is going to be one of the best teams in the country, but this Clemson team is on another level with Cade Klubnik returning, having one of the best wide receiver corps in the country, and two of the best defensive players on this team as well in TJ Parker and Peter Woods. This is just going to be such an instant classic of a game. Clemson is favored by 4.5 points on ESPN. We think it's going to be a little bit closer at 2.5. Maybe it comes down to a walk-off field goal like Clemson had to do against SMU in the conference championship last year. But Clemson, I think, is just the more proven team. We saw it last year when they made the college football playoffs. We're going to go with the Clemson Tigers here in a very close one.
I think this is going to be arguably one of the best games of the week. Personally, I think that Cade Klubnik is a little bit better of a quarterback than Garrett Nussmeier. I have him slightly above him in the Heisman race as well. Then it's Cal and Oregon State. And initially this offseason, we were pretty high on Cal when they had Jaden Ott, but after losing him, not as much anymore. They also have a true freshman quarterback who's going to be starting after beating Devin Brown out for the job. And I think that Oregon State is maybe being a little bit underrated this season. They have Malik Murphy transferring in from Duke, and I think they're going to have a really solid offense, very solid team overall. The Beavers are getting overlooked quite a bit here as they're only favored by 1.5 points. I think that because Cal has a true freshman quarterback starting, he's going to struggle quite a bit in this first road game, and the Beavers will get the win by about a touchdown.
And I think this Oregon State team is a bit underrated as well, with Malik Murphy coming in as their starting quarterback. So much of this team returns outside of just welcoming Malik Murphy to the program. So Oregon State, I think, is going to be a team to watch out for this year. And like Jonah said, with so much leaving for Cal this year, it's going to be very hard for them to succeed. And I think with going with that true freshman starting quarterback, they're basically saying, all right, we're going to take a chance this year. We don't have the greatest team, so we'll just see what the young guy has to offer and go from there. But Oregon State should be the better team, and they should get the win here. Next up, another highly anticipated game, Utah versus UCLA. The first game for Nico Iamaleava in a Bruins uniform. But Utah is bringing in a lot of new players as well. Devin Dampier to be the starting quarterback. Wayshawn Parker coming in to be the starting running back out of Washington State. ESPN has Utah as 5.5-point favorites. We think Utah is a lot better than UCLA. UCLA doesn't have a ton of offensive weapons, and this defense was not very good last year and made very little improvements. But Utah made quite a bit of improvements this offseason, and we really like them. I really am interested in seeing how Devin Dampier adjusts to playing at a higher level of football, considering he was at New Mexico last year and now he's moving up to Power 4 play. But I think he will be able to handle it, and Utah will be a very good team this year and kick off their season with a win over UCLA.
Now, we did debate putting this game on here, but went ahead and did it anyways. Washington, I think, is going to be a really good team this year. ESPN clearly agrees because they have the Huskies favored by 21.5 points. But I think in this first week, even though they have a really solid home field advantage, one of the most underrated in college football, this game might be a lot closer than people are expecting. Colorado State also might be being overlooked a little bit. I think they're going to have a pretty solid team in the Mountain West. They probably won't win the conference, but they have a good chance to get around 7 or 8 wins. Washington, we do think is going to be very good, but I could see this game potentially being within single digits. We have the spread right there at 9.5, so it's like right on the edge of 10 points, but very much inside of the 3 touchdown margin that ESPN has it at right now.
Next up, Virginia Tech versus South Carolina at a neutral site this year. This is a game where I've seen a lot of people pick Virginia Tech to upset the Gamecocks here, but we are very, very high on South Carolina this year with Lenora Sellers returning. I think this offense is going to be very explosive. And defensively, yes, they have lost a couple key players on this defensive line, which is one of the best in the country last year, but they still have solid players and one of the best defensive linemen in Dylan Stewart still on the team. It might not be as dominant as it was last year, but South Carolina is still going to have a very, very good defense. Virginia Tech does bring back Kyron Jones as their starting quarterback, but this defense has been gutted by the NFL draft and the transfer portal. If this was at Virginia Tech, then I wouldn't be surprised if we picked Virginia Tech to pull off this upset. But at a neutral site, I do think South Carolina is just the better team. ESPN has this as 7.5-point favorites for the Gamecocks. We're going to go up to 10 points in favor of South Carolina. I just think this offense is way too good to be slowed down by this Virginia Tech defense.
Another game on Sunday night, and this one's an AP top 10 matchup. Not for us, though. We have Miami all the way down at number 19, but we still think they're going to be a very solid team. You got Carson Beck transferring in from Georgia. Notre Dame, on the other hand, will be starting a freshman quarterback in CJ Carr. And I think that in his first game on the road, that is going to be very, very tough for him to go on the road and win that. They have Jeremiah Love coming back at running back, which he's going to be one of the best players in college football, one of the favorites to win the Heisman that's not a quarterback. But Miami, with the home field advantage, I really think is going to be able to slow down this Notre Dame offense, especially because they made so many improvements on their own defense. So we have this being a very close game. There's a little bit of a typo there. It should be Miami -1.5, not Notre Dame -1.5 for our rank and file spread. I think this is going to be a very back and forth game, but in the end, the Hurricanes are going to be able to hang on.
Considering Miami does have the more experienced quarterback, that's going to be the big reason why we have them winning this game. Notre Dame still has a great team, particularly that defense, but I trust this Miami offense a little bit more than I trust the Notre Dame offense. I think Jeremiah Love can only do so much And then also, if you want to look at history, Miami has only beaten Notre Dame 8 times in the entire series history, but 7 of those times have been at home, like this game is at Miami, including the most recent one where Miami absolutely dog walked Notre Dame. I just think Miami is a little bit better in this scenario, at least in week one, and they will get the win here. Then we move into September, the last game of week one, and it is TCU versus North Carolina. Big storyline here being Bill Belichick's first game as a college coach for the Tar Heels. And Gio Lopez going to be the starter for this game for North Carolina. It's highly sought after by Belichick in the transfer portal out of South Alabama. But the rest of this team, I'm still not 100% sold on. I think TCU with Josh Hoover returning and the amount of starting production that they have coming back and the wide receivers they got in the transfer portal, considering most of them left to the NFL, is just a little bit better than what North Carolina is bringing to the table. TCU is favored by 3.5 points by ESPN. We're right there with ESPN just because we don't really know what to expect from this North Carolina team. They could either be one of the better teams earlier on in the season under Belichick, or everything falls apart early on. So we're just going to play it safe and go with what ESPN has here. But TCU will be the team we pick here. So those are our week one picks for the college football season. Thank you guys for watching. Please make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on any more of our predictions or picks as the season progresses. And we will see you in the next video.